Hey, what's going on, everyone? Brent here. I want to start the video off by stating that this is going to be a very spoiler heavy review of Resident Evil 4 Remake. So if you haven't played the games yet, either Resident Evil 4 the original or Resident Evil 4 Remake, and you don't want to be spoiled, I highly suggest clicking away and going and playing the games, and then coming back and we'll talk about it. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So I want to start by saying that the original Resident Evil 4, I've played countless times. I've played like 20 to 30 times across, several different platforms. I originally had it on GameCube and then again on PlayStation 2 and then again on PlayStation 4. I know the game like the back of my hand. And it's an incredibly important game to me, as it is to a lot of people. But it came to me like I was playing this game during a time when I only had like maybe 3 or 4 games to my name at any given time. And Resident Evil 4 was a game that I managed to, consistently have for years. And I just developed a deep emotional attachment to the game. So it's an incredibly important game to me. And, I was initially relatively skeptical about the idea of Capcom remaking Resident Evil 4. Although any of my concerns about the game have now been completely squashed, I do think that Code Veronica should have gotten the remake treatment first. I still think that Resident Evil 4 came a little bit too soon, and if Code Veronica had been done first, it would have been a nice buffer. Anyways, that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy Resident Evil 4, the remake. I absolutely adored it. It was such an incredible trip down memory lane, and I got incredibly emotional playing it, especially the first time that I entered the village. It was absolutely incredible. The village was beautifully remade, almost down to a T. I mean, I was running around the village collecting items because I knew where those items were in the village from having played it so many times in the past. And it was amazing. And I gotta say the story is still so good. They made some changes to it, some necessary changes that I thought were incredibly important. I'm saying incredibly a lot, but the game was incredible. So I apologize if I'm saying that. I'm sort of doing this off the cuff thing. I'm not even looking at the notes that I had written down because I previously recorded this video, but everything just sounded super droney because I was reading off like a checklist of things that I wanted to talk about rather than just sort of speaking from this place of like emotion that I have over this game that I grew up with. Anyways, yeah, the story hasn't changed much. There were some necessary changes that were made, which I really liked. You still got Leon going to Spain, hunting down Ashley. You got the village, you got the castle, you've got the island. They made some necessary changes to Luis's character. One thing that I really liked was the fact that he's now with you more. He doesn't die as early on in this remake. In the original he got impaled by one of Osmond Sadler's tentacles. In this one he actually accompanies you down into the tunnels and helps you with the tunnels, but is then stabbed in the back by Krauser just before you're about to get out of the tunnels. And then he shoots at Krauser after you engage in battle with Krauser. He shoots Krauser to get him to go away before he does end up dying. And it made his death a lot more like impactful and meaningful than the original Resident Evil 4 had it. Luis has always been this sort of iconic character, and I honestly think that Capcom recognized that they did him dirty in the original, and they gave him a lot more screen time and a much more impactful death, which vastly improved his character. And then you have Ada Wong. They changed up her voice actress for some reason, which was kind of a weird choice, but it didn't really bother me that much. I just kind of rolled with the punches on that one. In the original, it's heavily implied that she's working with Albert Wesker, and you don't really get confirmation of that until the Separate Ways DLC, or the Separate Ways missions. It wasn't DLC back then. It was just exclusive to the PlayStation 2 version. And it wasn't confirmed until those missions on the PlayStation 2 game. Whereas in this one, at the end credits, you do see her talking with Albert Wesker, which is sort of a lead-in into Resident Evil 5, a better lead-in into Resident Evil 5. Ashley is vastly, vastly improved. I never had a problem with the original Ashley. I'm a firm believer that the original Ashley wasn't annoying, and the only reason why you found her annoying is because you sucked at Resident Evil 4, and she was always getting picked up by enemies. No, I'm just kidding. Or am I? Anyways, in the remake, she's a lot more capable, and she can do a lot more. She's a lot more confident in her ability to survive. Her segment, the segment that you play as her, it's so much better, and it's more intense, but it's not as stressful as I found the original one to be. And that's like, I mean that all in a good way. Like she's dodging plaga infested bodies of armor, and you shine blue lights at them, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and she's not like complaining or whiny, but she's still awesome. Ashley was one of my first video game crushes as a teenager, so it was really cool to see her back in action again, and a lot more confident and a lot more capable. Also, like, Leon Kennedy's back, of course, and I really like this iteration of him that you see from Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's an all-around amazing game, and it was absolutely, oh god, I cannot stop talking about how incredible it was. I also really liked how the game is just a complete, like, vast improvement. Like, it's like there's so many quality of life improvements over the course of the game that it just played so much better than the original. Of course, like, that comes with the territory with any remake. The biggest one, of course, is Leon can now, move and shoot, which makes things a lot, easier when facing enemies. But the enemies are a lot more sporadic in their movements. They're a little bit less predictable as they were in the GameCube and PlayStation 2 version, or the original version. Then the merchant has merchant missions that you can complete for spinels, and when you get the spinels, you can trade them in for specialty items at the store. Those are a lot of fun to do, and it actually like makes like shooting the medallions fun, and shooting shooting rats and snakes and things like that. Just random like fetch quests that reward you with stuff that you can, you get cool stuff from the merchant when you do it. I know I'm rambling, my bad. Some of my other favorite things that I liked is it's as if like the game was a little bit more self-aware than the original. Like, for example, during the first village encounter, I'm running to the tower to take shelter in there and wait it out. But then the tower comes crumbling down, and you're like, "Oh no, I'm back in the chaos of the village." I thought that was cool, and I also really liked the open lake area that they did in favor of kind of cutting some other things out. That was one thing that was cool too, is that they expanded on some areas that needed to be expanded, and then they trimmed back on some areas that needed to be trimmed back on. For example, the gondola section has been removed, but prior to fighting Vitoris Mendez in the village, things like that. And also, some of the boss fights are just better. The biggest example is Ramon Salazar. He actually now does something, as opposed to like just being this stationary thing on the wall that you have to shoot at every once in a while and avoid tentacles. He's a lot better. He's a lot better boss fight. All of the things that made the original Resident Evil 4 so fantastic, it's all here in this game. It's all here. They have added more horror elements, which is great. The cabin encounter with Luis is still intense as ever. I actually found this version to be more difficult than the original. There seemed to be a lot more enemies, but then again, I think it was a smaller area, and there's a lot of them coming in. I really like that. The water hall room still sucks. I remember right before going into the water hall, I recognized where I was at, and I had been playing for several hours, and I was like aiming to take a break soon. And I see myself at the water hall, and I'm like, nope, I am not going in there right now. I will come back and do this after I take a break. And I took a break for a couple of hours, and then I came back and I did it. But the thing about the water hall is you could go in there completely prepared and be ready to go, but you'll still like come out with like no ammo. The place is relentless and chaotic and frustrating, and I love it. The regenerators are still like terrifying. They're a lot more wobbly in their movements, which makes aiming at the plagas inside of them a lot more difficult. And I found myself missing a lot more than usual. Oh, and speaking of the plagas, one of the things that I really liked about this game is that it showed more of the effects of what the plagas were doing to both Leon and Ashley, especially when Osmond Sadler is like communicating to them through the plagas. The big example of this is like the Temperance Child scene where they're like fighting their way through the castle, and then all of a sudden Ashley gets like possessed and she takes Leon's knife and tries to go at him. It's a great scene, and it just shows what the plagas is doing to both of them. And then of course throughout the game you also see like black blood moving through their veins and their eyes getting all like crazy. It's fantastic. Anyways, I've been rambling on for quite a while now. Let's go ahead and finish this up. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 Remake, it took me back to a time where like it just took me back to being a kid. It took me back to being a teenager, and it felt good to come back to this game with these characters. I mean, I did my first playthrough, and then I subsequently just immediately started a new one. And I gotta say, New Game Plus is like broken. It's fantastic. I love it. You go around and you're a lot more powerful because you have all your guns and stuff. It's fantastic. Yeah, it was an emotional return to my favorite game of all time, Resident Evil 4. If you haven't played Resident Evil 4 Remake and you played the original and you loved it, you definitely don't want to miss this remake. Anyways, that's it for me, everyone. If you enjoyed this sort of like off the cuff review and you want to see more videos like it, please consider liking and subscribing to Work in Progress. It helps us out a lot. Anyways, I'm going to go back to playing Resident Evil 4. I'll catch you all later.